Oh, okay, now we'll get started with the April 17th version of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. We've got a couple, three things on the agenda. First thing on the agenda is discussion of the lodging tax. I would assume, Sean, this is yours?
Yeah, what it was we had a kind of a through the grapevine potential request for analysis. I think some of you have seen recently in the newspaper that the little cruise ship that would come into Bremerton the last couple of summers, there was just a few each year, and this year it sounds like they're upping it. Correct me if I'm wrong, to 43 trips. Does that sound accurate? And there was kind of rumbling if there was any, reason to perhaps do a special, request or analysis of some sort of funding to try to attract people from the cruise ship that moors over there at the Bremerton Marina to get on the passenger only ferry and bring them into downtown Port Orchard. Just was a little bit of a rumbling on that. I've not had any specific requests on that. I don't know. Has anyone else on the call received any other information on that?
I've got just a little bit of information, only that they that there's, I think the POPSA group is interested in trying to find a way to encourage people to come to Port Orchard off those cruise ships.
Yeah, and I did happen to run into Corrine Haydock Johnson here about a week ago and had kind of a high level conversation with her. And I don't know that the $2 ferry fare would be the reason they would come or not come. I think it would be important, and she tended to agree that POPSA put together, some sort of flyers and work with the cruise ship to be able to promote specific activities that are occurring in Port Orchard during the times that they're there. So I don't see the $2 probably being the reason why people wouldn't come. And so I don't know that we would necessarily maybe start precedents to do a kind of a mid-year review. That's just my thoughts. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sean, pre-COVID, when this was happening, I went over and had lunch. They pull in for a day. I got a tour of the ship. This is a small cruise ship, but it's expensive. It's a higher end, expensive experience. So I don't think the patrons of that boat are going to be deterred by a $2. But we need something, and I think that you're right. It comes from POPSA. This is what, a flyer or something that we hand to them that says, here's the things that you could do in Port Orchard, and they might come over and visit. But I don't think that the $2 would be a deterrent.
Right. Yeah, I think it's up to them to have a compelling call to action. Have an updated list of events or activities that are occurring each week when these ships are coming through. And I believe some of them stay over one night, and sometimes they're just a day stay, from what I understand.
Yeah, I don't know, but historically it's been a day stay.
Yeah. Joe, looks like you had a question.
Yeah, I think I'd just make the comment that it can be the $2 can be a weird barrier. If you're coming into the community, you probably don't have an Orca card, you don't know how to use the machine on the other side. If you don't have $2 cash, it's already kind of difficult to get down to the lower dock and like which boats go to Seattle, which boats go to Port Orchard. It's just something worth thinking about. Yeah.
I don't think we're opposed. Somebody's just got to submit an application and figure out. It's not a lot of money. We're talking under $1,000 and probably less than $500 in ferry fare that we're talking about here. And maybe maybe it's not lodging tax. Maybe the port and the city just agree to pay for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Joe. It's only $2, but it is somewhat of an incentive to have them at least come over and take a look at Port Orchard. And if POPSA maybe could work with perhaps the chamber in developing some sort of a little map of what's going on over here, and maybe the POPSA members can create some sort of little discount coupons for folks coming in from out of town. I think it could be a start of a happening situation with all the new boats coming in this year. It's my own personal opinion.
Christine?
Yeah, Pops is working with Visit Kitsap and the port, and Corinne and Irene are reaching out to Matt at the chamber. And the plan currently is to use the walking map that we have developed and are reprinting, along with some flyers, and potentially having some people go over to meet a couple of the early boats to see how that works out. To see whether, I mean, the last time they were here, a couple of times, no one ever even got off the boat. So they docked and they did whatever they were going to do on the boat, but they never actually got off the boat even to go into Bremerton. So we're sort of interested to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, when I was invited over, I was invited to tour the boat and get a lunch, and the dining room was full. Everybody was there having their lunch midday.
Yeah. So we're looking at just, to see what, we'll certainly hand out maps and flyers. We're going to try to find the contact information for the concierge of the shipping line to see whether we can provide him prior to them getting here with information that they can hand out to the people on the cruise itself, so that people, I don't cruise, but the couple of people on the board that do said that once you hit port, you usually have already made up your mind about the kinds of things you want to do because you've gotten the information ahead of time. So we're working on that as well. There's 46 planned trips as of right now.
Great, thank you, Christine. Anybody else have anything they want to chime in on this topic?
Mark, do we know the demographics of the cruise passengers? I mean, if they're my parents' age, they wouldn't be walking many places.
I don't believe we do, but I would imagine it's more of our age type of folks than the younger folks. Do we have any historic info on the type of passengers on these ships?
What I saw, Mark, I'm much younger than you. They were people your age, not my age, Gary's age.
I'm sorry,
Wow.
could you hear that
937,
question?
first cheap shot.
Wow. Well, the good news is I've seen Mark Schneering walk. He can still walk, so we're good. So
Perfect.
there's an audience there for us.
And I also have pretty good hearing at this point too.
Ouch.
I'm sorry, Christine, did you say you're working with Visit Kitsap as well on this?
Yes.
Oh, great, perfect.
And you've gotten in touch with Matt as well at the chamber?
We're putting together a walking map of downtown. That is one of those, it's the tear off kind that's easy to people to write on when you want to say, go here, go here, go here. So we're in the process now of getting that printed.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, it sounds like we're making good progress on this. And does anybody else have anything else to say about the potential $2 free trip for them?
Not specifically about that, but I think this is something that we need to probably massage as we move forward. When the breakwater gets rebuilt, it's going to be designed to handle a little bit larger boats than currently. And over at the Bremerton Marina, when the cruise ships come in, the staff is usually available with a golf cart to take somebody up to into town a little bit, or help them get where they want to go to walk around town, stuff like that. And it's probably something we could do here to make it more attractive for people to come to Port Orchard.
Yeah, and I would think there's got to be some way of tracking who comes across as well, so we can actually, come up with the correct amount of money that we're putting out in total for this. Have we done anything, have any experience on this type of thing before?
No, I probably talked to James or at the port to just get more insight into that, because he's kind of directly involved with that. James Weaver.
Yeah, yeah. hopefully that's something that maybe Pops and the chamber can discuss as well. I'll mention to Matt and see if he's had much conversation on that part of that end of the situation as well. Christine, you have your hand
Yeah.
up?
Pre-COVID, for a couple of years, HOPSA, with the cooperation of the city and Kitsap Transit and the little company that was running the late night boats or the weekend boats, did a ticket for for free foot ferry service. And we printed them and passed them out in Bremerton at the hotels. And we had an arrangement with Kitsap Transit as well as the other little charter company that they would bill us for that tickets actually used. And I want to say that it was like under $300 in the whole of the summer. There was not a lot. We printed 500, I think, and most of them were not used.
Yeah, Chris, that's mostly accurate. Kitsap Transit has always been the fiscal agent, as far as long as I've been in local government, and Horluck was the operator. So it was, they were just operating the boat for Kitsap Transit until we passed the high-speed ferry measure. And then here in the last, then their contract came up, we took over the service. So, but you're right. It was under, my memory serves me correct too. It was under $500. I believe it came from lodging tax dollars. I can't remember.
It did.
I might have, yeah. So somebody's just, if this is what we want to do, somebody's got to be the, whether it's POPS or the chamber, make an application. The city council can consider it. It's not a lot of money, but somebody's just got to take the lead on it. And then we'll enter into an agreement with Kitsap Transit like we did previously. We'll have somebody's got to develop a coupon, and then the city will reimburse Kitsap Transit for those tickets.
So I can tell you that in the past, I know, right, Joe? Yeah, I found this scrolling through Facebook. I was not notified that this meeting was even happening. And so I don't know where we are in the discussion, but I can say that in the past, the Chamber, Explore Port Orchard, and POPS have ramrodded this. We've applied for LTAC dollars. We've used LTAC dollars. I've had conversations with Kathy and James at the port for next year, although next year we don't know. I mean, depending upon the success of the cruise this year will determine whether they come back next year. But the port is putting out a lot of money on this. They're doing the boater bags and they're doing things like that. And in my discussions with James and Kathy is that that's something that LTAC dollars could definitely be used for going forward, and that we would work together to put together a proposal. I have talked to John Clausen, and he said that he's interested in, either a free or reduced rate if we do a coupon, because everybody's right. We've done them in the past, and the money, we haven't spent a lot. 40 trips at 100 bodies, we've got a potential of 4,000 bodies coming in. And if 10% of those people come across, that's not a very big dollar. James is concerned. He said that one of the big things is that if you go on excursions and you miss the boat back, you're screwed. And so, we have to definitely put together a package where it says, if you catch the boat over to Port Orchard by 10, you got to be back on the 3 o'clock, ferry going back. Because they don't want to go far if the chances of missing the ferry or missing the cruise ship is there. So there's a lot of logistics that we can work out, but I would like to put together a coupon to put in the boater bags or the cruise bags, and we would the chamber can front some of our LTAC dollars for that this year until. If it turns out to be wildly successful, then we need to revisit it going forward. But I think that it is something that we're willing to fund, at least for the first few weeks.
All right, so when does this get started? When do these ships start coming into port?
Last week.
Oh, God, we've already started.
Yeah, the first week they canceled. They're coming in basically every Friday through the summer. And then a few other days. They got different cruises. If you go to American Cruise Line, you can see right now the route has them stopping in Paulsbo and not Bremerton. But they've substituted Bremerton for Paulsbo. So they've got two different cruises that hit, that do Puget Sound. And one of them basically hits us every week. And the other one is, it's an extra trip, and it's not a Friday. It's another day, a different day. So they have started. I've got posters that I want to take, because we used to, and Chris probably remembers, we used to go downtown and hand out, when a new ship would come into the shipyard, we'd say, "Welcome USS Nimitz." We've got American Cruise Line, "Welcome American Cruise Line" posters that we want to give out to the merchants downtown to put in the windows.
Yep.
And I've got those, and I've printed some. I just need to gather the time to go hand them out downtown. But those are some of the things that we're working on now. I do know that the port is putting together the bags to give to them. Chris is right. If we can get ahead of it and let them know where that they're coming into town and what they can do in Port Orchard, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I think in summary, certainly could be eligible for LTAC funding. And so I think between the chamber and POPSA, maybe collect some data this summer and bring that forward with an application in the fall. And
Right.
let's see, this could turn out to, maybe we get a few bodies over here. So thank you all.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Anybody else have any other input on this? Okay, so moving ahead now, the second topic on our agenda is KEDA. So Joe, you're from KEDA. How about it?
I hear that I am. Hi, everybody. Joe Morrison with the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. Good to see you all. We held our fall forum. We held our annual meeting 2 weeks ago, and economic forecast. And despite a lot of uncertainty on the national level related to the economy, my own tea leaf reading, although it's not necessarily that of the experts, is that the economy remains really robust here and is likely to continue remaining robust. We didn't talk a lot about the economic challenges of our community, but they're generally speaking good challenges. Housing costs a lot, but at least housing isn't declining. And there are too many jobs and not enough people to fill those jobs, which is a better problem than to have not enough jobs and too many people wanting jobs. But these are kind of the big hurdles for us in terms of our economy for the foreseeable future. I don't know that either problem is going to get better. Kitsap Economic Development Alliance is looking at doing more work in the area of workforce and working with industry as client to help decrease some of those vacancy rates. And so those are kind of the highlights. We have a new 5-year plan that was unanimously approved by our board. It is on our website. It's the first thing you see at kitsapeda.org, and it details all these initiatives in much more robust detail. So that's what we're going to try to deliver over the next 5 years in order to grow our economy the way we want. Kitsap's going to grow one way or another. It's going to take intentional leadership to continue to provide the quality of life that we all enjoy in this community. That's the news that I've got. Happy to answer any questions or provide any further context if you folks wish.
Anybody got anything they'd like to add or ask of Joe while we got him on here?
Hmm.
Well, fairly
Anything
strong.
on your mind, Gary?
Just wonder if you could elaborate on your connections with the Navy and when things are expected to start to develop in that. That's an expectation we've always had out there.
We are moving slower than some facilities. So Hawaii is moving faster with their shipyard upgrades. There is at least likely $7 billion coming into the shipyard over the next 20 years. that number could be more with cost of living increases, just the not cost of living, but the inflation that we've seen. That number could be more, and more means like not a little more, but $1 billion or more. And that is something of, if we already don't have enough people to fulfill the jobs that are here, if there's already 100 plus, maybe 200 jobs open at the shipyard, hundreds of jobs at the medical center, private employers could add people to their payroll. That's certainly the case at Safe Boats out at the Port of Bremerton. That's the case in other spots. That work is going to create even more opportunity here. And that is something that we're keeping an eye on a monthly basis. We're now having something where it's an open house for prime contractors to talk with the local small business community and the Navy. But that work has been slow to come out, but it's likely to come out. It's going to come out one of two ways, either slowly over 20 years, or it's going to be a bit front loaded. And, they need a new dry dock to service the Ford class, and they need it soon. So this is a big thing. It's the biggest thing.
If I may, Gary, specifically to the dry dock, I was at a meeting with Rick Tiff a couple of weeks ago, and if anybody doesn't know, he's the #1 civilian over there at the yard, and unfortunately he's retiring this year, but they're 2 years out. All their environmental work is going to take 2 years. So it'll be 2 years before they start that work. And Joe's right. How fast it happens, I don't have any idea. I don't know if somebody does, but I don't know that we know locally.
As we try to accommodate the housing element and infrastructure and everything else that's going to come along with expansion of industrial buildings to serve the needs of the Puget Sound shipyard, retrofitting, expansion stuff, that information, knowing it sooner than later is going to be really critical. And I understand it probably is hard to get or get a read on it, but anything with your connections you can do to provide that to us, to some degree, the county's already got a shortage of industrial lands to meet the current requirement, but it's going to just get worse. So, and that's probably the same thing on the housing element. There's the national companies, even though this area seems to be pretty insulated from the same problems with the rest of the country economically, still the national companies take a step back and try to get a read on what where the economy is going, where interest rates are going, and things like that. So there is a slowdown in the housing development that's occurring. But it's not something they can just turn a switch on and start building houses right away. They got to go through permitting processes and things like that. So as much lead time as possible is going to be important.
Agreed, Gary. And I think we probably need to do more to try and get at the data, which is pretty arcane, right? Like there's multiple contracting entities that award the work, NAVC, NAVFAC. And sometimes it's awarded from here, sometimes it's awarded from other jurisdictions. But I think we can do a better job of sort of keeping a finger on that pulse and distributing the data more regularly. And like, what is the latest PSYOP update to the community? That's a really good idea, Gary. Thank you. I echo your sentiments. Boy, I'm being verbose, sorry. I echo your sentiments about housing, obviously, and industrial buildings. If we don't build the industrial buildings, that opportunity will just go elsewhere. I mean, the Navy's going to need lots of things that we can't fathom to retrofit all their dry docks and more. They're doing more. So if North Mason County or North Pierce County builds the necessary infrastructure, they'll have it. They'll get that opportunity. And then we are also, I'm yet to be convinced that we have enough housing, even in the South, even in Bremerton and Port Orchard. I think, rents remain high in Port Orchard. A lot of people, if they are basing out, if they're working at the shipyard, they're just moving into Belfair.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Gary, development out of the industrial park, is it subject to all the same permitting regulations, or is some of it like already, set aside for warehouses, and can a building be built out there without jumping through a lot more hoops? How does that work?
Well, even though it's an industrial park, you still got to go through the city permitting process. You're talking about which industrial park?
Bremerton,
Okay, so by the airport.
yeah,
Well, it's defined as an industrial park area, so those kind of uses are, the permitting gets shepherded along a little bit quicker, but they still have to meet environmental requirements and stormwater requirements, everything that everybody else does. And generally, we have developed some pad-ready sites, which are all pretty much spoken for, which should tell us something. But it takes a little while to get those sites ready to go because you got to go through the same permitting process.
so even if it's pad ready, that doesn't necessarily mean it's something's ready to be built on it immediately.
No, it kind of does. It means that everything is stubbed out in place and the stormwater element has been taken care of. But you don't want to get out ahead of yourself too quickly on stuff like that, because if the rules change and you don't have a use for it, then you may be resizing your storm pond or something like that. So if you have an expectation in the short term, and I'd say probably within 2 years, that you're gonna have a need for putting a building on a pad, then I'd say get it ready to go. But it's a little bit of a risk.
So does the port build any more stuff on spec out there?
Not really on spec, but we've had a good demand for people that want buildings put up, and we're moving forward right away to do that as quickly as we can. We don't like to own too many buildings, but we have stepped out to build a couple and keep them as rental buildings. But most of the time, we just want to lease the ground.
So it kind of sounds like, now from what Joe said and for what everybody else is saying, we kind of want our cake and we want to eat it too. We don't want to be too well prepared, but we can't be too far behind. I mean, where's the balance between risk losing the opportunities to North Mason and to to Pierce County versus somebody here taking the risk to develop the property in advance?
Well, that is exactly the problem. We probably miss opportunities because we can't deliver a site within a year to somebody to put a building on. We need 2 years in advance notice so that we can move things forward under a permitting process. Once we're under a permitting process, then you're given the rules, and as long as you complete the pad and start the building within a reasonable length of time, you're vested under those rules. But I guess for many years, nobody has been willing to put up a building on spec because the demand hasn't been here. The focus has been being located closer to the I-5 corridor. Well, that's changed. And now, we've got more land, more availability to the I-5 corridor. The pricing is much more favorable. And I'm not telling somebody they should go out and risk it, but the risk factor is far less today than it would have been, 10 years ago for industrial use buildings.
So it sounds a little bit like the earlier discussion with Joe trying to keep all of us, but you in particular, Gary, informed with what's going on with the Navy and how quick things are changing there. Would really be helpful in this situation.
Yeah. In fact, if somebody wants to start developing, and I've talked to a few property owners about this already, to set aside the storm element right away, but get your other utilities stubbed out to the site. Maybe have the site graded to a level condition ready for a building. With an expectation of putting the storm water in, which you can't really do till you get your impervious surface calculations figured out. But if I would say if you're reasonably close and you can pivot more quickly, then we might be able to secure some of these large industrial needs.
That makes sense. Anybody else have anything else they want to bring forward on this? Questions, comments?
I think it's worth saying that while there may be some opportunities that go to Pearson, North Mason, I should be clear, when it comes to North Mason, we should look at more areas of collaboration with them. You know, they're almost part of our economy, pretty much. You know, borders don't determine economies really. And there's a lot of opportunity for synergy there in terms of what gets placed along that route. So those are just some of my thoughts in that we'll be looking to work with North Mason too, right? And to take advantage of sort of what they have to offer and what we have to offer and what can be built in the middle of all that.
So by North Mason, are you kind of referring to the Port of Allen?
No, I'm actually just referring to the industrial lands across the county border as you head into Belfair. We're happy, you know, we do need a collegial relationship with all of Mason County, but I think that, you know, regional economic wise, Belfair is getting awfully close to, you know, a lot of people in Allen shop in Silverdale, right? So it's kind of it's part of our economy, for want of a better word. And when we look at the potential for industrial growth, and Gary can, I mean, I think Gary probably agrees with this, but he can let us know, you know, the available lands and the opportunities in North Mason County near the Port of Bremerton, and then what we have to offer, it's kind of, there's opportunity for that to coalesce.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. What's going to be the driving element in that whole relationship is availability of sewer. You know, we certainly like to keep all of the business here in Kitsap County, but that element may dictate where it actually goes.
Well, I think that when the bypass, if and when the bypass for Belfair gets completed, that will open up a whole nother pathway from a little deeper into North Mason and more into Mason County for folks coming to Silverdale rather than going to Olympia for their shopping as well. If anybody's been out to Belfair in the last year or so, getting through there is very difficult traffic wise. So I think that bypass is really going to be an improvement for traffic flow through that North Mason area myself. All right, anybody else? Joe?
No,
All right,
thanks for being investors in Kita, and always let us know how we can support you best. And Gary, I like that idea about regular PSYOP updates, so we'll look to implement it.
All right, perfect. So last topic on our agenda today is special events. So who can open this special events topic?
I'll note that this was marked as an interest of something to be talked about, but we could not find any record of who requested it. And so I left it on the agenda. But if it's something that nobody wanted to discuss, that's okay too.
I know a few things. I mean, we've been the last couple of council meetings and the next couple, you know, many of these events are being brought to the city council for the road closures. And I know it was Fathom's, we had some concerns with Fathom's vendor for the fireworks. The chief shared with me Saturday. They had found a new vendor. So we're back on, I think, good footing there. There were some very concerning things happening with the other vendor, and we put Fathoms on notice what those violations were. And these were, you know, federal violations of handling explosives that are very serious. And their vendor pretty much said, we don't do things that way. And we said, you got kind of have to. So that's behind us, I believe, and cut the ribbon Saturday morning and had some cake down at the farmer's market. It opened Saturday. I know the 3 different car shows are all on track. I'm not aware of any, our updated traffic control requirements were, are a heavy lift the first year these events, put those plans together. But after they've done it once, it's the same plan they're submitting year after year. So, we've increased the requirements because we need to be safe. We need to close the roads in the proper manners. So, we got some pushback from the organizations, but once they understood why, why we need to do this, because we're all liable for this if something happens and we didn't plan for it properly. So it's been a work in progress, but I think everybody's in a good place for this year's events.
So what's gonna happen when construction starts on the lift station? Port parking moves down to the gazebo and control of parking lot number 4 gets turned over to the port.
It's
And
not
I
just
know-
4, it's all 3 lots are going to be controlled by the port. And James has been working, as a matter of fact, if you went down to the farmer's market, you saw how the configuration was a little different. They're squeezing them back a little bit farther because all of that parking in front of the port's office, probably in 60 days as a whole, or they're at least mobilizing to create that hole in the ground. And we're in negotiations with the port for, what the new agreement looks like. But and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, but the port controls those 3 lots. They're their leases or their property. And the nonprofits will need to work with the port to get approval. The city will still have a role from a public safety standpoint. And we're gonna enter into a parking enforcement agreement with the port because we have people that do that and have equipment to do that. So I believe that the what is now the commuter parking, which is at 50% capacity, with commuters this year, COVID changed that, and so did the Southworth Ferry route. People are going that direction versus coming to downtown Port Orchard. And so the marina patrons, and users will be in the same lot as the commuters. And I haven't seen anything where the port, is going to take away the commuter parking. And it appears, at least in the latest iteration I saw, the 2-hour parking that they're providing for the merchants, they intend to honor that too. So anything beyond that, Gary, that you've seen?
Not really. We've just, to be good neighbors, have taken on the farmer's market, trying to keep it right where it is so it can continue to function as it was. And, doing the best we can under the circumstances. It'll be a little inconvenient for, some of the liveaboards. They'll have to walk a little farther and so forth. But at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that the redevelopment of the community center and everything down at that end of town happens as expeditiously as it can, so we can move Port Orchard forward.
So it's my understanding that as soon as that's all turned back over to the port, the city is virtually going to cancel all of the approved permits or approved.
No.
Well, that's an email from Brandy to the port said that it would
No,
basically.
Matt. That is not
Okay.
accurate at all.
Well, what's not accurate? That Brandy didn't send the email, or that they're not going to turn everything
I
back
think the
over?
context that the port has a role in this now, and that they're in control of those lots, not the city. That is the context of that, whatever it was sent out. There's another step. The port,
Right.
there's the port's
Right.
parking lot. Okay, we're not canceling anybody's event.
And so do you anticipate there being an issue with the traffic driving from the port parking lot in front of the gazebo to exit parking lot 4 from a
That's
public
why,
safety standpoint?
like the farmer's market, as I just spoke to, they moved the farmer's market back one row so that their long-term, they have liveaboards and then they have folks that come on Saturday to come use their boat. Okay. Those liveaboards, their cars are there all the time. And so my understanding, and this is James's and Gary's world, not mine, but with my understanding, they're going to use those parking stalls in the front side, not within the farmer's market for that purpose, so that they can prevent conflict with traffic and the activity going on in the farmer's market.
Yeah, another comment I would add, and I think this is obvious to everybody, but as downtown continues to redevelop, especially with the community center project, the Kitsap Big project, downtown is changing, downtown's evolving, and it may become very, very difficult to have road closures in the future. And so I would just encourage all of us as a community to look at, perhaps other locations throughout our city that might, in the future, right? It's going to change. And so we may have to look at alternative venues and spread some of these events throughout the city. So I'll leave it at that, but it is changing and we can feel the change already.
Mhm. Well said.
And I think the parking issue, we are developing a lot of new projects downtown. Just getting started with that. I think the parking issue is going to be in a position of flux for a while. I'm sure we're going to learn on the fly and make improvements and changes if needed. But it'll be on a case-by-case basis. I think you can put the best plans in place, but until they actually start to get worked, you don't see where you can tweak here and tweak there. So it is going to be challenging, I think, downtown for parking. Starting with the well project here later on this summer.
Sewer project, Mark, different liquid.
Yep, sorry. Christine, do you have anything to say on this one? Okay. Fred, you
I
guys
just have one
Rob, can
other
you
comment.
tell us a little
Go ahead.
more about the pushback to the special events? Was it regarding the requirement for the traffic control plan? Was it the procedures or the fees? Because I think one of the sense that I got was people were throwing out a figure that suddenly they had to pay $15,000 they didn't used to have to do. What do you think that is in relation to?
I'm not footing the bill, but the city isn't. There are events, there's 5 events that are grandfathered that the city takes care of the cost for their traffic control. The parade, the fireworks, the Saints Car Club, and there's 2 others that escape me off the top of my head. And I believe that the traffic control for the parade, which is the most robust, because it closes it from the boulevard all the way to Kentucky Fried Chicken, that is probably $15,000. Something that's just closing, Harrison and Frederick, doesn't cost very much, I don't believe, to close that street. But we can't have pedestrians and buses and cars commingling in a festival. And so, it's probably a few $1,000s to close portions of Bay Street or those other side streets. But I find it hard to believe that it would be $15,000 for one of the small festivals or events.
Okay,
Yeah, I think also, Fred, it's important to note that the city's fee for these events is like $50.
Yes.
So when you read stuff on social media about the city gouging, increasing the costs of an event by $10,000, that's not the whole story. That's, the city's fees are $50.
It hasn't changed.
And hasn't changed. The costs of the traffic control, and there's ways to work around it, but the hyperboil of social media wants to throw the city under the bus on these particular events.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. That's completely accurate.
Well said. And we have got to keep our community safe. Bottom line, we've read in the newspaper for the last 10 years, these tragic events that have happened, and we just need to make sure that what we're doing it right. So, and there is a cost associated with doing it right, but public safety is paramount.
And I'm just to be honest, it's less expensive for these folks to go hire a company to do this. Because if we bring our union employees in for overtime on the weekend to put Jersey barriers out, it's really expensive. So it's just the private sector, does this for construction projects all the time. And so your best, I mean, we'll give you a quote, these nonprofits a quote, but I can just about assure you that it's less expensive to have the private sector go out and do this. And if your volunteers get trained to be certified flaggers, that's another way they can reduce the cost for their events too. So there's ways to make it very expensive, and there's ways to make it less expensive.
Great. Hey, Gary, did you have something you wanted to add in?
It just had to do with parking, but we're kind of past that. I was just going to mention that, Matt, we did a parking study back when I was on the chamber board, and it showed there was plenty of parking. I don't think if you did that same study today, you'd find there's hardly any parking available with the way things have developed over the last several years. So parking is going to be, like Mark said, an issue we're going to have to deal with growing pains, and somebody's going to probably have to build a parking garage eventually to meet the needs of the city. But as usual, we have to feel the pain first before it happens. Yeah.
All right, great.
Something to talk about.
Matt, you have anything else you don't want to discuss this morning? Anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
I've
Joe?
got one. Go ahead, Joe. I've got one too.
I think maybe some of the city officials might have an idea about this or not. I think we've heard things about Home Depot and their interest in our community. Is there any kind of update on that?
Yeah, they were ready to break ground on or just about. They were in their permit process, and they realized we are, I hope, 2 years, 3 at the tops away from breaking ground on Bethel Phase 1, which is the roundabouts at Salmonberry and Blueberry and the complete street in the middle. And those improvements are crucial to their project. We put a round, with their they're only responsible for half street improvements along their project, which would be Salmonberry to the Walmart light. So, they realized they would be doing the groundbreaking, or excuse me, the ribbon cutting on their brand new store. At the same time, we started a $10 million construction project at their access point. And they're smart people. They said, we're going to wait a couple years. So I think that hopefully they'll break ground the same time we do. And we cut a ribbon on our project at the same time they cut a ribbon on theirs. And that's kind of where we're at with Kitsap Bank and the road project on Bay Street. We want to synchronize those two projects so that when they cut their ribbon, we're cutting a ribbon on the brand new street. And it's just this harmonious love fest.
Thank you.
I'm sure it will be.
Rob, could you give us an update on the roundabout there going in at the 76 and Kentucky Fried Chicken? Because that's going to affect us this year, is it not?
There's a residential project around the corner from that is appealing the stormwater aspect of the state's permit. And I think at a minimum, it will delay that project a year, and it might cause the project not to move forward at all. So more to come. And if you want another update, the roundabouts at Bethel and Lincoln and Mitchell, there was a court ruling or new data that came out that I guess tires are bad for fish. And there's the compounds and tires, and because this is federally funded, we have an additional permit from fisheries National Marine Fisheries that we have to get, which caused us to do about a $750,000, and we believe in additional stormwater improvements, and that set us back a little bit. And this project has to be pretty well underway for bus access, because the transportation hub for the school district is right there off of Lincoln. So if that's in jeopardy of being punted a year too, because we have to be underway and have that road accessible for the school buses by September. So, and then I have one other good of the order. You know, I was just the messenger Friday at the retreat. The county, Rob Gelder shared with me that the county is considering passing a resolution for a 0.3 cent sales tax for a public safety levy countywide that would go to the voters. When I shared that with the city council, they didn't react very positively to that, and partly because they didn't understand it. And I gave that feedback to Commissioner Gelder this morning. I said, if you're going to move forward to this, you need to, somebody from the county needs to come to a city council meeting and talk to us about it and what this means. And I did get an answer on the 60-40 split. So the county gets 60% of the tax raised in Port Orchard, because that's what state statute says, because they have they run the Superior Court and the jail. So.
And Rob, just clarification, you had said 0.3 cents, and it's 0.3%.
Yes, 0.3 of 1%.
Correct.
I'm sorry if I didn't say that. Yeah, that's not 0.3 of 1%.
That's right.
And I don't know if you guys are aware, but there was legislation proposed last week that would increase the 1% increase on property taxes.
Yeah.
So right now, property taxes are capped at a 1% increase per year. The legislation that was proposed last week would increase it to 3%.
Yeah, tied to no more than 3%. It would be, I believe the bill ties it to an economic index. You could get up to 3% if the CPI was 3% or higher. So yeah, that bill's still alive. It's gotten farther this year than it had. I mean, it's just about every session there's talk about it, and actually there's a bill this year, and we'll see. It's got a hearing today.
All right. So nobody else has anything else for the good of the order. I say.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Gary.
Just one question, probably for Rob. So out at the McCormick Woods area, there's been a commercial node that's been in their development plan for years. I've heard recently that maybe that's going to move forward. Is that true?
Yeah, if you can believe what's written in the newspaper. But Jim, where are they at on construction on? I think it's next year, I believe. But Jim would know more than I.
Yeah, we've not yet seen the building permits for it, but they're finishing up their land disturbing activity permit. So they're probably going to start pushing dirt around this summer, and then kind of jump into constructing those buildings. So it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I heard there was that they're getting the pads ready this year. I would suspect you'll see vertical construction next spring.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? So let's call this meeting at 10:25. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll have another meeting next month. Thanks, everybody.